You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast, your local source for upcoming events, hot new listings, and bite-sized interviews with business and community leaders. Here's your host, Brent Jones.
Good morning, Fort Erie. Hello, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 9 of the Fort Erie Podcast. It is Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, and I'm your host, Brent Jones. Today, my guest will be Phil Cudmore, tattoo artist and studio director at Neon Crab on Jarvis Street. But just first, let me say congratulations to Tom G., who is the most recent winner of my Lucky Strikes gift certificate giveaway this fall. As many of you regular listeners know, with each new episode this fall, including this one, I'm giving away a $50 gift certificate to redeem at Lucky Strikes in Fort Erie. To win this week's gift certificate, all you have to do is click the link below this episode to access the show notes. Scroll down the show notes page to the section where you leave a comment. Leave me a comment about today's episode, and I'll choose from the comments, my favorite, and that person gets a Lucky Strikes gift certificate. So let's move on to what's making news in Fort Erie this week. I wish I could say that the kind of breaking headline news here was more positive, but let's go through what we've got. So first and foremost, if you are crossing the border, as many of you are, land and ferry crossings are now permitted into the United States again. Here's what you need to know for returning to Canada. So all that's required, as most of you know at this point, to get into the U.S., aside from the usual having a passport, having an ID, not being a criminal, all that good stuff, the only thing in addition that you need is proof of vaccination. And you can have mixed vaccinations, say one Moderna vaccine, one Pfizer vaccine, that's fine. But when it comes to returning to Canada, you will also need to have a molecular COVID-19 test, a negative test, taken within 72 hours of you crossing back into Canada. And that's the full like PCR type test, not the rapid test, the antigen test. So decide for yourself whether or not it's worth it. Second news headline I wanted to go through: the Canadian Motor Speedway crashes and burns in Fort Erie. This article in Niagara this week comes courtesy of James Kulik, who's been a repeat guest on this show. James writes that the ambitious Speedway project was given the green light to move ahead by the Ontario Municipal Board back in 2012, but stalled out for a whole number of different reasons. And basically, if I were to summarize, funding for this project dried up basically around 2017. Land needed for the development was never purchased, so if you don't own the land, you certainly can't acquire a building permit for that land. And more to the point, what's known as a sunset clause was triggered this fall. Basically, because construction had not begun, the land for the intended speedway reverted back to its original agricultural zoning. And the third and final story I wanted to touch on here, the headline reads, "Stacked Townhome Proposal Raises Ire of Crystal Beach Residents." So residents of Crystal Beach, of the Crystal Beach neighborhood of kind of Rebstock, Ridgeway, Rhodes area, are concerned about a development for 154 stacked townhome units on 1.5 hectares of land. Concerns are that, of course, this development will negatively impact nearby residents, and in a neighborhood that's dominated by single-family homes. I find myself a bit torn on this story. I generally don't offer my commentary on the Fort Erie news. I think of myself more as a messenger than, say, a commentator. But just as an example, in this article, one resident said, "We've been here for 30 years, and it was slated to be a 16-home subdivision, not stacked townhouses. There was always going to be a development, just not this size and volume." So, of course, I see this gentleman's point, but I also think it's worth underscoring that we have a bit of a housing crisis on our hands, a shortage of supply. So I'd be a bit hard-pressed to think that the town would be overly opposed to adding 154 more family dwellings to our town. I guess time will tell. Just before we get to today's interview, last thing I wanted to touch on is a couple of new posts in the Fort Erie Job Leads Facebook group. Sneakers Sports Bar in Crystal Beach is hiring part-time cooks. For more information or to apply, you can contact Goran, and you can find the number to contact Goran right in the Facebook group. Check out the link in the show notes below this episode. The other job posting that caught my eye, Fort Erie School of Music, and you might remember that Rob Rolston was a previous guest on this show. Fort Erie School of Music is hiring music teachers of all kinds, so whether you specialize in piano, guitar, ukulele, voice, violin, whatever it is, to apply, there's an email address in that Facebook group, Fort Erie Job Leads. There's an email address where you can send your resume and also outline your availability. Now on to my interview with Phil Cudmore. All right, folks, I am sitting down with Phil Cudmore, studio director and artist at Neon Crab Tattoo and Piercing on Jarvis Street. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. And let's talk a little bit to start about Fort Erie. What makes Fort Erie such a great place to live and work?
Well, the fact that Fort Erie is such a small town, it's, even though a lot of new industries come into town, it's, there's a lot of new builds that are coming out. It still has that small town feel, where everybody kind of knows everybody and, everybody can kind of relate versus the big city. So, you're able to get a little more personal with people, which definitely makes a huge impact, especially in our career. And, we have the benefit that we're a border town, so we're right close to Buffalo. I know during the pandemic right now, it makes things a little bit tougher. But, we do have that in our back pocket, as well as, we're close to Niagara Falls and the bigger cities. So we get some of that traffic coming down as well. It's definitely a very, smart place to kind of have a business, right?
For sure. Well, let's talk a bit about the business and tattoos and body piercings, and maybe touch a bit on stigma. Because I remember when I was a kid, it was like, you only got a tattoo if you were, in prison or you were in a biker gang or something like that. And now it's like everybody and their mom's got tattoos. So, I mean, what do you think changed?
Much like you said, like when I got my first tattoo, I was like 16. They didn't want parental consent. They didn't care. And, it was, a lot of smoke in the air, it was like this haze, when you walked in, heavy metal playing out the front door, very grungy, very dark. And you almost wondered if you were going to make it out alive. And since then, it's that stigma's kind of wore off a little bit, where it's a lot cleaner environment. With the health regulations that are in place, we're not allowed to smoke in the shops anymore. We're not, that stigma of dealing drugs out the back door is kind of since left the industry. And we're labeled now as professionals, where, people from all walks of life, whether it be doctors, lawyers. So it's things like that have definitely a huge role and a significant impact in how the tattoo industry and the culture has, kind of gone up to this point.
Well, let's talk about how you got into the industry. I mean, how did you get into tattooing? How long have you been doing it? And, what, in your opinion, makes a great tattoo artist?
So myself, I've been in the industry now professionally for just a little over 13 years. When I got into it, I kind of fell into it by pure dumb accident. I was actually in law school, to become a lawyer, and a friend of mine had a tattoo kit he bought on eBay or something like that. And he's like, I want to get my ex-wife's name covered up. And I'm like, cool, I'll do it. And, we were a few pops in, and needless to say, I wound up tattooing him that night. Did not turn out great at all. I scared the crap out of him. And I kind of fell right in love with the whole aspect of tattooing, and I wanted to learn more about it. And, 13 years later, here I am. And I've since come on board with Neon Crab, and I love it. Like, it's actually a family dynamic. It's not like every artist is against, each other and everything else. It's, every artist in the Neon Crab, we have 5 locations across Ontario. As long as I've been in the industry, I still look to my mentors for answers. Will, the owner of Neon Crab, he still looks to his mentors for answers from time to time. So you never know it all in this industry. And that's something that, a lot of people coming in through the industry need to be aware of. And, don't be afraid to ask questions, and, just be open to that corrective criticism.
What sort of things should people consider when they're getting their first ink done? I mean, should they, design, placement, artist, budget? Like what do they need to be thinking about?
And again, with something like that, it kind of really depends. It varies person to person. But I always recommend, it's on your body for life. You want to make sure it's something that's, kind of got a little bit of meaning to it. The old days of, walking into a shop and pulling stuff off a wall, that we called flash art. Those are kind of days of the past, and just make sure that you have a good relation with your artist. Make sure they kind of are seeing things the way that you're seeing. Placement is another huge issue. Placement can make or break a tattoo. Just, you can have a beautiful piece, just a bad location, and it kind of takes away from the overall dynamic of the piece itself.
Right. I'm of course going to put links to Neon Crab, and kind of everything you guys are up to in the show notes below this episode. But I guess just to kind of wrap things up, what would the process be for somebody looking to book with you, or perhaps another artist, Neon Crab, and what kind of wait times do you have? What does that process look like, and how long does it actually take to get somebody into a chair?
So basically the best thing we always recommend is, go on our website at neoncrab.ca. You can scroll down on our main page. It gives you a list of every artist we have across the Neon Crab. And if they're in the Fort Erie area, they can definitely, check out the artist in that particular studio. You just click on their picture, and it takes us right to our Instagrams, so they can actually, check out all our work, see if it's something that fits within kind of what they're looking for. Then they just email right off our website, and it is monitored, pretty much 24/7. And yeah, basically what happens is they wind up getting referred to a particular artist of their choosing, and we start the process with that artist and that client, going over designs together. Once a design is set in stone and that's what the client wants, we get them booked in on a day. And yeah, we just kind of go from there.
Right. All right. So pretty straightforward. And it sounds like it's very much a collaborative process between the client and the artist.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Without the client's 2 cents, you're basically just going to wind up with generic pieces, which is something we don't want, right? We want something that's going to be meaningful for the client, and something that's fun for the client to, get and engage with, as well as the artist, right? Because the artist, we try to engage with the clients as much as we can, and make it as much of an enjoyable experience as human.
Right. All right, great. Well, thank you, Phil, so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Let's conclude today's episode with some upcoming community events. Most of us know that this Thursday, November 11th, is Remembrance Day. There will be a Remembrance Day ceremony held at the Ridgeway Memorial Cemetery, which is located at 3900 Far Avenue. Coming up on Friday, November the 12th, the Yoga Dome is having its grand opening weekend. This is an event that runs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you're into yoga, check out the Yoga Dome, located at 2873 Ridgemount Road in Ridgeway. Also happening on Friday, November the 12th, the Fort Erie Lions Club is hosting their world-famous baked ham dinner. And of course, this is a takeout-only type situation. You can pick up your baked ham dinner for just $12 between 5 and 6:30 p.m. from the Fort Erie Lions Seniors Center at 265 High Street. Then happening Saturday, November the 13th, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., check out the Holiday Craft Fair. This is going on at the Fort Erie Optimist Club at 1555 Gilmore Road. And just lastly, it wouldn't be an episode of the Fort Erie podcast without me mentioning that I myself will be hosting an open house this Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. at 313 Bowen Road. If you are in the market for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom family home, come see me there. So I think that concludes what's going on in Fort Erie this week. Folks, next week will actually be the season finale, the last episode of season 4, number 10. So I hope you'll join me for that next Tuesday. My guest will be Teresa Mazzotti, owner and operator of Blushing Bride in Crystal Beach. But so long for now, everybody. I'll chat with you soon.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones, a sales representative with RE/MAX Niagara Realty Limited Brokerage. Follow @BuyWithBrent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast on popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and catch a new bite-sized episode every week. Until next time.